Welcome into a special episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we have a lot to discuss. Basketball transfer portal will quickly be underway. It is not underway just yet because the national championship game is going to be happening on Monday. We're going to talk a little bit about what we think the Alabama roster might look like, what some of the newcomers potentially are going to look like. Obviously, talk a little bit of Jackson Richardson, but I also wanted to talk some Alabama baseball because if any of you have missed it, Alabama baseball is on an 8-game winning streak. They just had 2 back-to-back series sweeps over Florida and Auburn. So I wanted to bring in somebody that I know knows a ton about Alabama baseball. I've got Theo Fernandez joining me. Theo from Bama Central. How are you doing today, Theo?
I'm doing great, Owen. Appreciate the invite. And yeah, there's a lot to be excited about with this baseball team. So I'm excited to talk about it and maybe catch anyone up who hasn't been paying attention because there's a lot going on at Sewell Thomas right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton going on at Sewell Thomas. And, before we dive super deep into baseball, I know a ton of fans here watch basketball, and me and you talked it. Theo's on Joe Gaither's show a lot, and I went live with them a few weeks back. And obviously the season maybe doesn't end how some fans want it to. I still am firmly of the mindset it was a successful season. You made it to the second weekend. You lost to one of the favorites. I mean, I think the current betting favorite to win the national title. I think it's going to come down to Michigan or Arizona. Winner of that game is going to win it all. I still think it was a successful season. What's your kind of general mindset on what this season was? I personally think it's probably one of Nate Oates' best coaching jobs ever, given the transfer portal misses and the injuries he had to deal with all season.
I do too. Now, let's be honest. The transfer portal class is a part of the coaching job, so you have to kind of view it all together. But I really think Nate Oates got just about everything that he could have out of this roster, right? The way the pieces were able to come together, the way you were able to, fight over some of the adversity that the team faced. I think this is a successful season. You look at how special it is. How many schools will never make 4 Sweet 16s in a row? That is a very extraordinary feat. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and be upset over a Sweet 16 exit.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, I think the reason why some people are upset over a Sweet 16 exit is because you were at an Elite 8 and a Final Four the 2 years prior. But that is discrediting the hundreds of years prior to that. The fact that you had only made one Elite 8 in 2004 and had not made another one since then, right? Like Nate Oates obviously set his expectations higher. And so as a fan base, I think we have a right to want a Final Four. And I think if you were to ask Nate Oates, he would look at it as an unsuccessful season. But I think that that's a standpoint of like, he wants to strive for perfection. I think, but if you had to really ask him like, hey, what do you think you got out of this team? I think he would sit down and be honest with you that he got the most he could out of his team. Because I think that's where all the Charles Bediako stuff comes up. I think he knew he had an issue in the front court. And some of that was injuries. Some of that was, misses in the transfer portal. I think there's a lot of things that played into that, but I think that Nate knew deep down, if he does not get the front court fixed, he's not going to be able to compete with the Arizonas and Michigans of the world. And so that's why Nate tried to do what he could do. Obviously the courts disagree. We're not going to belabor that point. It's gone on and on, but I think that was Nate kind of admitting, hey, I got to do something now.
I agree. I sat in the press conference room in Furman right after the preseason exhibition, and Nate stood there in front of us and said, yeah, rebounding is going to be a problem for us this season. We knew this from the beginning. It was a problem all season. Nate Oates tried working around things, and I think it teaches you a lesson, right? You can't come into a season unprepared in this way. You have to have bigs that are physically able to compete, and I think, if anything, it will make Nate overcorrect in the transfer portal this year and make sure that that's not the reason Alabama loses games. Because you were just never – Yaxel's just a matchup. He's a game wrecker for anyone, but you come in with this kind of front court. It just wasn't going to happen for this team.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of move to one of the guys who Nate is bringing in as a freshman. And, I wouldn't call him some elite front court guy. He's not even a front court guy. He's more of a wing back court guy. And Jackson Richardson, we just saw him play in the McDonald's All-American game. Finishes with 13 points, does really well on the glass, especially on the offensive glass, which is something I think that Alabama struggled with a good bit this season, right? When you look at some of Alabama's better teams over the last 5 years or so, they've been really good offensive rebounding teams. And I think that's a spot where Alabama, at times was okay this season, but definitely struggled for the long portion of the season. But additionally, Jackson just gives you so much athleticism, and that's what you see obviously with him winning the dunk contest. For any of you that may not have seen it, I tweeted it out. I'm sure Theo. We have plenty of people that tweeted out the dunks. He is a super high flyer. I think his dad said he's got like a 42-inch vertical. Just absolutely insane. Obviously, the pedigree of being Jason Richardson's son. The last name holds a lot of weight. I think that he's going to be really good. But what do you think he brings? Because I think that what this recruiting class brings and what I expect to return for next season, I think this is going to be one of our most athletic classes ever. And I think part of that's also, I love Houston Millett. I think he's one of my favorite players ever. I love Latrell Wrightsell. But there was a lack of athleticism, especially with the injuries that they had dealt with. So I think the athleticism, there was a skill talent there, but there maybe wasn't the same level of athleticism that you get out of like a Davion Hannah or a Jackson Richardson or some of these other guys that we have on the roster.
Yeah, Davion's a name that ties right in. I know we're going to play, talking about the transfer portal in a minute, but I look at Richardson. I think I came in maybe undervaluing his athleticism, right? Because it's always hard to, you see pure athleticism and you read everyone talking about, yeah, this guy's one of the best verticals in the class. He can do all this stuff. And then you actually sit down and you watch him against the best high schoolers in the country. And there was one play that really stuck with me. He just bit on a pump fake defensively on a three. And just how quickly he was able to make up the ground, cover, and contest on the actual shot attempt. Like, this guy can do things athletically that most people can't. And it also allows him to compensate for certain defensive mistakes, right? You ever fall behind on a play or you just freshman learning, adjusting, and you're able to make up ground because of how freakishly athletic you are. I think it really bodes well for how this guy can produce as a freshman with Alabama. And just the broader context, like Jackson Richardson was one of the best players on the court that game all weekend. He played well in the scrimmage, obviously had the dunk contest. Few players, I think, impressed as much as he did this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at Jackson Richardson, obviously some people are going to point to the fact that his shooting numbers aren't great, and sure. But I think that what you can point to with Jackson Richardson that's a guarantee of what you're going to get season one is really good defense, an elite motor. I thought that his motor, the entire All-American game, his defense, I mean, he did really good on defense on Caleb Holt. I thought that over the course of that game, I thought that he just was one of the best defenders in that game. And at a certain point, your defense is going to get you there. And he's not even if his shot's not falling, he still is an offensive threat because of what he can do cutting and finishing with alley-oops or finishing around the rim, getting the offensive rebounds, right? Like, he could finish with 10 points and not make a single jump shot. And that would not surprise anyone because if he's just finishing with his athleticism, whether it be with layups at the rim after you're getting your offensive rebounds or what. I think that Jackson Richardson is a guy who obviously surprised a lot of Bama fans, myself included, when he committed here. I think a lot of us had kind of written him off just because you had not heard Alabama link to him super aggressively. But I'm very, very happy that we did land him. And I think that all three guys we have coming in are going to give us that athleticism. I guess kind of the last point before we move over to baseball is, a lot of us are looking at what this team is going to look like. Obviously, we know we're losing three seniors, right? You're losing Latrell Wrightsell, you're losing Houston Millett, you're losing Noah Williamson. The foregone conclusion is you're losing LeBaron Philon. He would be insane not to go. He should have gone. He came back this season and made himself a lot of money. I think he's going to be a top 10 draft pick now. Obviously, having come back, the shot's just so much better in what he showed on the biggest stage. There's four guys you're losing. I'm personally of the mindset that you're probably losing Collins. I think the heart issue is probably just a little too much, and this is going to be a little bit too high level of competition for him with the medical issues he has going on. So I think Collins is gone. Keaton Bristow is one that I've heard both ways. I would assume gone, but I was of the mindset that there was something else at play. I've since been told that it pretty much is medical, that he was only cleared for 3-on-3 maybe about a month ago. So it is medical, but I think that he's probably gone. I think Davion Hannah is probably, of the guys who sat, he's the question mark. Like, does he return? Does he not? I could see it go either way. I think what I had heard prior to Jackson Richardson committing was that Davion was coming back. I don't know if Jackson changed any of that, and I also don't know what Nate's trying to do in the transfer portal. So I think he's a name that I'm very much questioning. And then my big one is Taylor Boboin and London Jemison. I think that you keep one, but I don't know if you keep both. Obviously, the big one is going to be trying to fight off all the suitors for Aiden Sherrill. I think retaining Aiden Sherrill is a huge deal. I know that Nate Oates and staff want to do that, but Louisville, Michigan State, Michigan, I'm sure a ton of people are going to be calling for his services, trying to see if they can get him to enter the portal. So, what's kind of your, big guys you want to point to, that we think are gone or that you hope are kind of tier one got to keep?
I think it all starts with Sherrill, man. You've developed this guy for 2 years. How awful would it be watching this guy take the jump to stardom at another school? That's one of the ones that, first of all, like you look at Sherrill, like, yes, he's almost certainly a 4-year college player. Keep him in Tuscaloosa for all 4 years. I think that's one where you've done all the work, you've developed him, you've turned him into a guy who's going to be in. I mean, I think he looks primed to take the jump to the next level next year, right? Like he looks like a guy who should be in the all-SEC mix, quite frankly. You do not let that guy leave Tuscaloosa. And you're going to be fighting off, right? He's from Detroit. You're going to be fighting off the Michigan schools in particular. I think both will probably throw money at him. I think if you're going to go all in on one guy, one area, it is him. Now, that's not to say, like, obviously you could bring in other bigs from other places, but I think last year proved just that can be such a wash sometimes. It's so hard to figure it out. So it starts with Sherrill. And I think the clear-cut number 2 has to be London Jemison. First of all, I'm still of the opinion that no matter what Amari Allen posts on his Instagram story, he will probably not be returning to college basketball. I think that this is a guy who has put enough tape out there and done enough impressive things despite the late season slump that he will be told he can be drafted in the first round. Did an interview with Hunter DeSabre on Bama Central, and in that story, he talked about how he'd always dreamed of getting to be a one-and-done player. I would be pretty surprised if Amari Allen came back, so I don't think you'll have to worry about any money there. I am so high on London Jemison. I think this guy is just such a pure offensive player. I mean, he's got the scoring ability, and you look at the way that he was able to plug in with his flow, with the ball movement, and starting to really settle into the offense late in the season. Earlier, we were making the Michael Porter jokes where possession ends with Jemison. As he continues to actually settle into an offense, I think he could be second, third leading scorer on a team, that kind of potential. I think Jemison is a guy you absolutely do basically whatever you can to retain. So I think it starts with those two.
Yeah, on the Amari Allen front, I think if there's any chance that he returns, I think it's a LeBaron Fallon situation where he enters and he's going to have a grade in that 25 to 40 range. I think if he had kept up his hot streak after Mississippi State or whatever, I think realistically he may have played himself a little earlier. But I think the problem is the top of this class is just insane. Like in any other class, it's not even a debate. Like, because he's going to test really well. He's at 6'8". He's a great rebounder. He's a really good defender, right? Like, he's going to test great. And if this was not the 2026 class, I think that we would know for a fact Amari Allen is gone. And I think the fact that it's the 2026 class is the reason why a guy like Tyler Tanner is going to come back at Vanderbilt, right? Like, this is just a crazy class. And I'm just curious if that plays into it at all. Like, realistically, I think you're probably right. I think realistically he's probably gone. But I think it just plays a little bit more into what it could be. You know, if you bring back London Jemison, I think that what the plan would be is to have him as your 3 and get some extra size for the front court. Have a true 4-man, whether that be a Shea Hall that we're hearing Alabama linked to with Shelton State. I think he's going to be more of a rotational, like, third big man. Jadarius Davis Fleming, I know Alabama was linked to him, the big guy out of Mississippi State. He's another guy that I think potentially could be another guy. I don't think either of those are starter pieces, but I think both of those are rotational depth that you just didn't have this season, right? Because I think the problem is your rotational depth was Keaton Bristow. At time was Taylor, but Taylor obviously was hurt and he just didn't have the size. My favorite quote of all time, and you probably didn't hear it because I think you were at the game, but at the Boutwell edition, they called him built like a blade of grass, and it's my Favorite thing I've ever heard all season. But I think there's a lot of things that Alabama can do to build around it. Obviously, the questions around Aiden Holloway. There's a lot of things that you can kind of point to. Just wanted to kind of cover these. Didn't want to belabor this point. I know we've gone a little while. Want to transition over to baseball, but appreciate your kind of thoughts on that. Anybody who's watching this, I'm sure y'all all have basketball thoughts. Put them down in the comments. Let me know what y'all's kind of top players to keep are. What do you think about Amari Allen? Do you think he's going to stay? Do you think he's going to leave? I think Theo's probably right. I think realistically we should probably lean toward him leaving, and that's my thought as well, because I think he's going to test really well. Like I said, the class of 2026 is the thing that makes me curious if he's potentially going to stay.
And one quick thing on that.
Oh, go ahead.
He's got the perfect case study, right? LeBaron right there, a guy who stayed and made a lot of money. So maybe that plays into things.
Absolutely, right? And I think the difference is that Amari Allen has to decide what he would do differently next season. LeBaron's was clear, hey, you weren't the lead guy last season. You were behind Mark Sears. You're going to be the new leader. You're going to have to take a step up in shooting. That was pretty clear what he would work on in the next season. With Amari Allen, I think it's clear, but maybe not quite as clear for LeBaron. LeBaron was clearly go from 30% shooting, 31% shooting to 40% shooting, be a leader, show what you can do over a full season, and you're going to be that guy. LeBaron does it, right? With Amari Allen, I'm not sure if the scouts are going to be able to point to something as clearly that he knows he can increase as well, right? LeBaron knew coming in, I can be that leader. I can do what I need to do, and I'm going to play my way into a lottery pick. I think also we have to consider LeBaron was coming back to be the home state kid. He wanted to try to lead Alabama, similar to a Mark Sears situation. You want to be the home state kid that leads Alabama. So, Amari doesn't have that. And so does that also play into his decision to say, okay, I'm just going to go to the NBA, not having that Alabama kid on the roster that's returning also just to be a part of the state. So I think there's a lot of things that play into that. And I think it could go either way, but I'm probably with you and Da Silva. He's probably gone realistically, which I hate to see, but I completely understand if that's the case. Well, I want to shift over to baseball. Part of the reason I brought you on is I know you cover the Alabama baseball team a ton over at Bama Central. And after a fairly slow start in the non-conference, Alabama, I think from myself, I pay attention obviously to the baseball team, but it starts when basketball is going on, and basketball has a lot of my time. And so I kind of keep an eye on it at a glance, but I'm not really going to any games. And, as somebody who's followed baseball for a long time, when I saw the loss to, I was telling you before we got started, when I saw the loss to Southern Miss, in Hattiesburg, it's a run rule. And deep down, you're you don't want to lose a midweek game. But I know, Southern Miss is really, really good. Anybody that follows baseball knows, hey, Southern Miss is a team that hosts regionals all the time. This is an elite baseball team. Losing to them is no shame in that. And then we lose that first series, as a sweep to Kentucky in Lexington. What was kind of your mindset coming out of that series in Lexington? Because especially after the midweek there, you lose to South Alabama, so you've now lost your opening series in the SEC in a sweep to an okay Kentucky team, but not an elite Kentucky team. You lose to South Alabama, and Alabama really seemed to be faced at a crossroads where how is the season going to go? Was that kind of your thought coming into that Florida series, or what was your kind of mindset coming into that next series?
It's all about trying not to overreact to things, both poorly and the good and the bad, right? And I'm sitting there, though, having watched these 4 straight losses and having seen the same issues continue to pile on throughout the season. And yeah, I'd say that was the first time I started to feel real concern over the direction of this season. Because first of all, you're at the point where it's okay, we've got to legitimately talk about, can this team make a regional? That's a conversation I never thought we would have to have about this roster. But then it's also it's the bullpen failing in the big moments. It's guys making the same errors time and time again. I mean, Justin LeBron, he was up to 8 errors after that South Alabama game after having 9 all of last season, right? And you just look at a lineup that's continuing to struggle with the same things. And I was really concerned, especially with the way these pitchers looked in the opening SEC weekend. Tyler Fay had a rough outing. Zane Adams, not the best outing the first weekend against Kentucky. So yeah, I would say there was real concern. And my thought coming into the Florida series was, okay, these next 2 weeks, Florida, Auburn, these are basically breaking points for the season, right? And that's a hard statement to make early, but things had the potential, I thought, to go really haywire over the next 2 weeks. And obviously they did not.
They did not, and that's obviously a big reason why I have you on the show kind of talking about what has happened the last couple of weeks. As we kind of mentioned, Alabama is on a 4-game losing streak. The wheels, to a degree, feel like they're maybe starting to come off. Like you said, you have 2 back-to-back home series in conference, which for those of you unaware does not happen super often. Like, you don't get a lot of back-to-back home series. It feels like baseball is a lot of home away, home away. You don't get a lot of back-to-back home series, but Alabama gets the back-to-back home series. They make the most out of it. And, for me, the turning point of the season, and when you look back at this season, a really good chance of the turning point of the season is the complete game no-hitter that Tyler Fay throws on Friday against Florida. Would you say that's clearly kind of going to be the turning point for the season, because that locks everybody in for this is what we can do?
Yeah, and it's funny, like Rob Vaughn, when I spoke to him the Sunday of the Auburn series, he tried to downplay it, right, and the effect that it had, because at the end of the day, his whole theme, the way he wants his team to attack things is we're just process. We know what we can do. We go do it every day, and we don't let individual results like impact anything. To say it didn't have a role would be crazy. I mean, you watch a guy throw that. Think about the spark that gives that kind of team, and it's one of the greatest things I've watched. I did watch it from courtside in Tampa at the NCAA tournament, which I got a lot of flack for. But I'm watching a historic performance, and watching a no-hitter is incredible, man, no matter what the context is. And what Fay did, what it did, first of all, for his confidence. Second of all, for the actual effect it had on the bullpen, right? Being fresh and being able to go. And then it leapfrogged this team in so many different ways.
Yeah. So what do you think one of the, as kind of a fan that obviously I've seen some of the games, but I've not maybe followed it as closely to this point as I have some of the other seasons. What would you say is kind of the big thing that this team is doing well? Because I know last season and obviously throughout Justin LeBron's tenure here at Alabama, he's been kind of the guy who it feels like, I think last season, if I'm not wrong, he had like this crazy batting average. He was hitting a ton of home runs. He was really leading the team in basically every statistical category, and looked like a surefire guy to be maybe a Spikes, number 1 player in the country. This season, it feels like his batting average is down a little. He's obviously still hitting plenty of home runs. He's got 11 home runs to lead the team by, a fairly substantial margin. It looks like anytime he gets on base, he wants to steal. He's 23 for 23 on the season, but what is kind of the difference between, because it looks like LeBron is doing a little bit more of being a part of the team and not just it's LeBron and everybody else. Because I feel like in certain seasons, it's been like LeBron is this elite superhuman, and then everybody else is like, come on, guys, he needs some help. What else are we going to do?
Well, LeBron really, really coasted off his early success last year. He had, I want to say the number was 42 RBIs by this point in the season's turn of the calendar to April last year. He ends up batting 216, I believe, was the number in SEC play. It was bad. It was underwhelming, right? But I look at what he's doing this year, and yes, the numbers are not as high as they were. And that will affect the way, his consideration for a Golden Spikes or stuff like that. It won't affect his draft stock. He's still very much viewed as, a top 10 MLB draft pick, but he's also coming through in big moments. And that's one of the things that, frankly, he was not doing at the level that you want your superstar player to do last year. And this Auburn series was a perfect example, right? He is able to get on base and, steal second, come around on 2 wild pitches to give you the go-ahead run against Auburn in that Sunday game. And earlier in that game, you had nothing offensively. You got basically nothing offensively in a game where no one was able to, hit the ball. And LeBron is the one who drives in the game-tying run, right? RBI to bring home. I believe it was Fowler who he brought home. He's making plays in the big moments. And it's the least concerning, statistically underwhelming season I think I've ever seen. Because LeBron's doing all the things right. And the errors have kind of dried out, a little later than Rob Vaughn would have liked, but they've dried out. You trust him to make plays. He still makes plenty of impressive plays. He'll still have a phenomenal defensive highlight reel this season. So LeBron is there. LeBron is operating at a high level. It's more so the other guys that have risen to his level. I'm able to go into the post-game press conference and it's a different player up there every day because it's a different guy every day who's making the big play, who's getting the hit in the big moment. John Lem, the Australian, has been phenomenal. But he's playing his way into MLB draft talks as a real draft pick for after this season. You got guys like Justin Osterhaus, had so much hype, slow start to the season. Well, now he's hitting. Now he's driving in runs. Now he's an impactful player. Luke Vaughn, out of the 8-hole, I think it's third on the team in home runs. Brennan Holt has been one of the better second basemen in the SEC. He is getting on base. I believe he's somewhere around 425 right now, flipping the lineup card for Bryce Fowler and Justin LeBron. And then the story of this team, frankly, is Brady Neal. Brady Neal, I don't know how much you guys know about his past, but he passed up basically 7 figures in the MLB draft out of high school. Went to LSU, took meaningful at-bats on a World Series winning team. Struggled to crack the rotation the next year, transfers to Alabama, disappointing. Now he's entering his senior year and you don't really know where you stand. It's kind of looking like, oh, wow, this is a little underwhelming for this guy. And now he's the leading hitter in just about every category besides home runs for this Alabama team.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the stats here, he's currently hitting 357. His OPS is over a 108. And like you said, he has 8 doubles on the season, which leads the team. He's got 33 RBIs on the team that leads the team. He has by far the highest he has the highest slugging percentage, even with not as many home runs as LeBron. Like you said, he has 6 home runs. LeBron has 11, but yeah, he's out slugging him. Almost as many walks as LeBron. He is the guy, like you said, that is doing a ton of things for this team. And would you say he's, obviously he's the surprise guy, not in the talent, the talent was there. Obviously he's a guy who turned down the MLB, but, would you say that he's the guy who on this team has made the biggest jump and has put the team in a spot where they're at today? Cause he's a guy who you could circle of, if he wasn't doing this, this team is, 3 or 4 losses worse, as we sit today on April 1st.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear cut. I mean, yesterday is obviously a big example of that. He hit the go-ahead solo home run in the 9th inning to put Alabama above a very good Jacksonville State team. That's a legit ball club over there. But no, what Neal is doing is nothing short of incredible this season. The other big piece of it, this is a guy who starts his career at catcher, who played primarily catcher last year. I know he made, I want to say it was 40 starts last season, split between catcher, DH. Well, you have had so many issues in the outfield, right? Guys being hurt. Logan Davenport, Coleman Mizell, both out for the season, not going to see the field this year. Sam Christensen, who was one of your bigger transfer portal additions from Oklahoma, still hasn't seen the field. Not sure. We may see him pinch hit or something this weekend, but it'll probably be another week before he's ready, and who really knows what his role will be. Well, Brady Neal, this catcher, has been able to go out and play right field for you. Has been able to, okay, here's the position where we have an opening. Here's where we could use your production the most. We're able to throw you there. He can catch. He can play DH. He can go out in the field. I think that's so valuable for this team to allow the lineup to look exactly how you want it to. So Neal has really just impacted this team in so many ways. Lem is the other name I would throw out there. Batting out of the 5-hole, he was a bit of a wild card coming in. You saw good tape from Southern Illinois, but you just don't know how that's going to translate. And he's been one of the better hitters. Even Jason Torres, the consistency that he has played with this year was frankly non-existent down the stretch last year. This guy, from April on, I think he had a total of 2 multi-hit games. I highly doubt that'll happen again. And obviously, it's baseball. Anything could happen. Anyone can slump at any time, right? But you trust him so much more. This guy also, Jason Torres, he's playing. He was pretty bad last year at DH or at third base defensively, and that's kind of underselling it. He's been solid. He's only had a handful of errors. He's making plays. He's not a liability for this team. I just look across the board. You have guys who are rising to the occasion. You have guys who have clearly taken steps and are really starting to settle in this season.
Yeah, so as we kind of move to the upcoming schedule, obviously Alabama heads to Norman this tomorrow to take on Oklahoma in what should be a top, depending upon with the way all the different baseball places do their rankings, the schedule has it officially ranked as the 11th ranked Oklahoma team. Alabama's somewhere between 10th and 17th, depending on who you want to listen to for the rankings.
I just always go off D1 baseball. I like them. I like Mark Etheridge. They do a good job. So I say, you know what? We're not going to entertain any of the other stuff. I wish we had an AP poll, man. That would make life so much better.
Yeah. So like I said, a consensus top 20 matchup. Let's call it that, right? Like a top 20 matchup in Norman. This is a spot where obviously Alabama's going on the road, a place where I think it's going to be a little different than when you played in Lexington. Obviously, now you're coming off of a win instead of coming off of some losses. Also, I think the other thing is it's gotten warmer, and in baseball that matters a pretty substantial amount because the warmer it gets, the more the ball flies. And, when you're playing Lexington early in the season, it's going to be a little colder. The air might be a little thicker. It's just not going to fly quite as far. And like I said, in baseball, that matters a fairly substantial amount with keeping balls inside the ballpark. What's kind of your thought about this upcoming Oklahoma season Oklahoma series? Because you got them, then you got Arkansas coming to town. You go to Texas. It's just kind of a upcoming. Then we got Tennessee. Vandy comes to town, to South Carolina, and then Ole Miss finishes out. So, I feel like you did a pretty good job, honestly, missing out on some of what I would consider the better teams in the conference. I think that obviously Texas is really, really good, but you miss out on like a Mississippi State. You miss out on an LSU. So there's a couple of top teams in the conference that I think you miss out on. What's kind of your overall kind of thoughts on what might happen for this Oklahoma series, or what Alabama fans need to kind of keep an eye on as we continue on through SEC play?
Hey, Owen, what would you do if I told you LSU is currently sitting in 12th place in the SEC? That I say that to kind of speak to the idea that we don't really know who's good yet. Or we know that most of these teams are good, but we don't know how to separate them. We have such little the SEC is always chaotic, and this year it just feels like even more so. LSU sits at 4-5 right now, as does Arkansas, a team that's opened the season in the top 5 nationally. Like, it is just such a wash, right? Alabama gets swept and is now a game out of first place in the conference. So it is really hard to predict at all how these series are going to go, right? And I look at this, and you have South Carolina, which you don't like to chalk up a series as a sweep ever because it's baseball. That one should be a sweep right there. That South Carolina team is really bad. Outside of that, those 6 series, they could go any way, and you really have not upset, right? As long as you take a game. Those are good opponents in all of those series. Those are teams that, as of right now, are going to be, could easily play their way into hosting a regional, right? This conference is still so stacked, and you have teams that, like, we're still so early in the season. We have just immense talent on all of these rosters, right? I look at Tennessee. This team got walked off basically every game against Vanderbilt, right? It was so close to sweeping Vanderbilt. And then we're looking at Tennessee as one of the better teams in the SEC. Instead, they're 3-6. So there are going to be losses in here, right? There's going to be adversity throughout. I predict that Alabama will likely lose this series to Oklahoma. I've got the Sooners taking 2 out of 3. And I know we struggle at this, right? With the way we cover all the Alabama teams, we struggle to keep baseball, right? We struggle to not separate it and lump it in with the other ones, but you've seen what this team is capable of. You've seen the level they're capable of playing at. You can play at that level and still lose very often in this sport. Playing against regional level opposition every single week. So I just think your goal is you finished 16-14 last year in conference play. A winning record in SEC play is always going to be a plus. If I did give you a number right now, I think you're shooting for 17 wins in conference. You sit at 6-3, that would be 11-10 over 21 series, or over 7 series, 21 games, right? And that speaks to how hard it is to win games in this conference, because trust me, if you had told anyone around the program that you're going to win 17 games in the SEC, they're very happy with that result.
Yeah, and I think kind of to your point, and you mentioned it, I think it's really important and worth mentioning, like, don't put, I'd maybe struggle with this sometimes with baseball, but like, I'm better at this at basketball. Don't judge basketball by the same rules you judge football by, and don't judge baseball by the same rules you judge basketball or football by, right? Like, because as you said, like, losing a game, right? Like, we can look at a basketball game and be like, oh, we lost that game. You just can't lose that game. In baseball, like, if your best player, your starting pitcher, maybe gives up a few more runs and you get a little deeper into your bullpen earlier than you need to, maybe you get out of it, but it hurts you on Sunday because now you don't have your top arms to throw that would have come out of the bullpen. Like, there's so many things that can go into it in baseball, and like dropping a game or even 2 games is not really that uncommon in baseball, and it happens. And kind of to your point, when you talked about LSU being 12th, it is very, very common that the top 10 team, like the number 10 team in conference, is still ranked in the top 25. Like, that is a normal occurrence in the SEC, that you are bottom half of the SEC, and well inside the bottom half, right? Because 8th would still be top half. So you're 2 teams below bottom half, and you're still easily inside the top 25. I mean, the SEC is far and away the best baseball conference in the country, and it has been that way for many years now. So do not think that, Theo saying 17-13 is kind of a goal is you saying, oh, this team's going to be terrible, because 17-13 could host a regional.
17-13 does host you were 16-14 and came really, really close. 17-13, you got the Tuscaloosa regional,
which just speaks to how incredible that the SEC is at baseball. And, obviously I wanted to bring you on to talk about it because I know you cover it a little more closely than I do. But like I said, it's something that I think fans need to understand, is like, this is a really good baseball team that you're seeing. And if you see that, even if something happens and we end up and we get swept by Oklahoma, don't give up on the guys, because just as easily as you could get swept, you could sweep the next team. And that's what you saw with Kentucky, followed by Florida, because that same Arkansas team that he talked about being in the top 5, they just got swept by the Florida team that Alabama swept.
And then Florida lost its midweek last night.
Yeah.
This sport is pure chaos.
I mean, Florida gets swept by Alabama, goes to Arkansas, and sweeps Arkansas for their first time in Dave Van Horn's tenure that he gets swept at home. Then Florida loses their midweek. So, I mean, again, like you said, the sport's just chaos. Just understand that. And, I think that that's something worth noting. Obviously, I know you're going to cover it. Please let everybody know where they can follow your baseball coverage, because I know that you've got a lot of it out there, and follow this team super closely.
Yeah, you can follow on Twitter, X, at Theo Fernandez _. I usually do, when I'm here at Sewell Thomas, I'll do all the live vlogs, updates, and I'll provide some insights when I'm watching just from my couch, trying to update on the team. And let me just add one more thing on this. Like, don't undersell. I'm not trying to undersell what this team has just done, because there are very few things. Like, my point is, very few individual results matter, right? But what Alabama just did over the past 2 weeks is an exception to that rule. First of all, first solo 9-inning no-hitter since 1942 in the program. That is a legendary, all-time Alabama baseball moment. Sweeping Auburn, sweeping number 5 Auburn at home. You hadn't swept them at home since 2012. You hadn't swept them in general since 2017. Like, yes, you always get excited about the rivalry matchup, right? When we go up to Knoxville in a couple weeks to face a very good Tennessee team, that is going to be exciting, no matter how it turns out. And also, this is the first 6-game conference winning streak for this team since 2002. To kind of put into perspective how difficult it is to sweep back-to-back opponents. This team has done special things already. This team has a special player in Justin LeBron. You do not get this kind of player to Tuscaloosa often. You do not keep him in Tuscaloosa for 3 years often. Like, just enjoy this season for what it is, because it is a special group of players led by a special superstar, and the team has already done special things. So I cannot be more excited to cover this season.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, Theo. And I think that that's definitely worth mentioning, because you just have to understand how, like, when we're talking about like hey, don't worry about this, don't worry about that. You're 100% right. Like, it's an 8-game winning streak, right? Like, any individual performance, you don't need to take too much out of, right? Like, you could have worried too much about the South Alabama loss or something, but you should take a little bit of something out of an 8-game winning streak, because that's not a single individual performance. That's two midweek wins and a 2 conference sweeps. Like, that's a huge deal. Alabama, as you said, hadn't had the double sweep since 2002. Alabama hadn't swept a top 10 team. I think it was before that, when you did it against Florida, and then you do it back to back, beating 2 top 25 teams in sweeps. There's a lot of really good things that this team has done. And I think that that's part of the reason why you just have to be excited for what Alabama's doing. And when you have a guy in Justin LeBron, even if you want to look at it as a little bit of a down year from what it was last season, he's still going to be a probably top 5 pick in this MLB draft. I've seen some people have him as a top 3 type pick in the MLB draft. He's a really, really special player, and he's a guy that can turn it on at any moment. And he's a really special guy that can do crazy stuff in the field and at the plate. So, in baseball, anybody, just like you said, anybody can go in a slump. Anybody can get hot. And if somebody gets hot, you never know what's going to happen. And that's what makes the sport so fun to watch, because, the old saying is like, if you get on base if you get a hit 4 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. So like, this is a very unique sport in the way that it works out, that, everybody in the Hall of Fame got struck out way more often than they got a hit.
Yes. So, and I'm excited. Like I said, very glad to be covering this team. You guys it definitely warrants your attention right now, especially with no more basketball to watch.
100%. So for anybody that wants to follow him, I'm going to have it linked down in the show notes. I will have his Twitter linked, as well as Bama Central linked down below, where you can find his written coverage. Thank you so much, Theo, for joining the show. I really do appreciate it. As he said, follow him on Twitter. Check out what he's got going on. I know sometimes he goes on the Joe Gaither show as well. I know you got all kind of stuff that you do. So thank you so much for joining on the show. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And this is going to be all. I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.